Welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your resident idiot and host, Michael, and we are going to be talking today about the Sound good? It's a sound check. We're going to do a sound check with the Mest. First, I want to do a little update. Y'all didn't like my earpad video very much. Nobody seemed to tune in for that. I can't, they all can't be winners. What can I say? But I think I did get a little lost in the weeds on that video. Like watching it back, I think I was getting a little too lost about what the different pads were doing to the sound and ignoring how great the headphone actually sounds. And I think I maybe want to do a sound check, a formal sound check of the Verite in an upcoming episode and really put the headphone through its paces and break it down. Because that's exactly what I did with the unique melody Mest.
Go.
Now, I have spent a number of days with these headphones, really listening to them through a variety of sources, different music styles. I've taken some interesting turns with them, and I've tried them with expensive and cheap amps. I've really gotten a good handle on what this headphone is capable of doing, and I gotta say, I've wrung them out dry and hung them up wet.
Thank you.
And they have survived the test of sound. For starters, I got to talk about fit, because you know how I was talking about with the Odins, how you needed to sort of leave them out a little bit to get the best bass response, and I had to kind of tilt them up maybe a little bit and barely insert. Not the case with the Mest. The Mest, you want to seat. You've got to seat them because there's this thing in there called a bone driver. Bone driver.
Ouch.
I don't know. But it apparently it makes there's some part of this headphone, and there's no exploded view of this headphone that explains where this bone driver makes contact and gives you that extra bassy experience. But I do know that a deep seating in your ear is necessary to really pull the bass to its max. This is a fun headphone. It's extremely enjoyable to listen to. It has a great tuning. And for $1,400, I honestly believe that there are going to be very few headphones that are going to be able to play in the same pool as the Mest. It's a winning tuning. It is, I think it's a W-shaped tuning. If I had to sort of like explain where it would graph, I don't have any graphing stuff, and Lord knows I'm not smart enough to pull it off if I had one. But I would call it like a W-shape. I think it's either a W-shaped where there's a little mid-rangey bump, or it's an extreme V, like an extreme V. Because they really carefully, when they were tuning this headphone, they carefully carved out that 6 to 8K range and pulled it down, because these never get shouty, they never grate. These are an all-day listening type of headphone. I would say that they are far from neutral. These are for kicking back on the deck with your favorite beverage, put your feet up, put on some tunes, and really enjoy yourself. That's what these do. These are not reference. The focus here is clearly on fun. So I said that the upper mids are recessed. When you get into the treble frequencies, there is a lot of treble presence. Very pleasant and surprising when you start hearing little pops and cymbals and things. There's a nice sparkle at the top end that I didn't necessarily expect, because fundamentally this is a dark headphone. I would not call this bright by any means, but yet there is still plenty of treble up there to give it a beautiful shimmer and sparkle in those upper frequencies that's tremendously enjoyable. I would not categorize these as a bass head headphone, but I would definitely call this a bassy headphone. And I know I called the Odin bassy. I would call these bassy ee-er.
That sounds sweet.
Now, where do they fall apart? Because these are half the price of some of those upper echelon headphones. They definitely don't have the detail or the speed of the upper echelon headphones. They're not faster to the note. They get a little confused sometimes in the middle frequencies when a lot of stuff is pumped at them. They don't split everything out in quite a very nice, beautiful, arranged way.
Oh, boogers.
Although they image tremendously well, the Soundstage, not tremendously wide. And that's okay. These are more of an intimate feel. These are more of an intimate headphone. They just don't expand out the way that some of the other ones do. But the imaging, right there. Don't ask me what means.
Aw.
I would also say that these kind of lack the wow factor that the Odins do. Like you put in the Odins and you start playing something, there's a definitive wow. The KSE 1500, when you start playing tracks on that, there's a moment where you just kind of lose your breath because you're like, what am I hearing? These aren't that way. These, I don't find myself track seeking the way I do on some of the more advanced headphones like the Verite, where I'm like, I want to hear how this sounds. I want to hear how that sounds. I find myself putting on a record and the next thing you know, I'm like 4 or 5 tracks deep. And I find myself doing other things and I'm just enjoying the experience of having this headphone in my head. And whereas those upper tier headphones tend to be a little more choosy about the source, this thing's a honey badger. It just don't care. It'll play through anything.
Nice.
I put this through the Cayin N8. I put this through the SP1000. I put it through my computer. I plugged it into my iPhone and was streaming some stuff off Tidal on my iPhone. Didn't care. Played back wonderfully. These things go with anything. And though I call them source independent, I will say that they do play better. They scale with the source. So if you have a low-end source that doesn't play very good resolution files, it'll still pull back and give you some nice surprise out of them. It does start to really shine when you get into those higher detailed products like the Hugo 2 or even the SP1000 with its dual DACs. It really does benefit and scale very well when you start pumping in higher quality sources and audio files. And one of the things that surprised me is these things rock. This is the first headphone I've had in this entire series, I think, that I would say categorize as a rock-friendly headphone.
Rock and roll!
I was playing Van Halen on these things. I was playing Nirvana, Nevermind. It Smells Like Teen Spirit and Come As You Are and all those great tracks. There's a flanging that they used. It's just kind of the Nirvana style or the sound of that era. They flange everything, and so everything's kind of spinning around your head, and these image so well that it really pulls off a beautiful trick with that. You're sitting there kind of in awe while all of this is happening. It's very present, and then the body on the guitars with this headphone, fantastic. And then the bass drum, when the bass drum kicks and it's kind of thumping in the back of your head like that, fantastic rock headphone. Some other tracks I was listening to, I do have my lame-ass Dark Side of the Moon, which I tend to use as a reference on everything. I know you guys are probably tired of that one, but I'll go to a different track at least. Let's talk about Us and Them, because in the beginning of that, you've got the bass and the very slow passage, and then it ramps up to the great big stuff, the horns and the keyboards all jump in. Forward They Cried from the rear. When that comes in, things get a little kludgy. These things don't exactly split things out in the way the higher end headphones do. It gets a little congested in the middle. So that's the first real weakness I found on this headphone. And then I found myself kind of searching through the depths of Tidal, which is always a dangerous place to go because you wind up in some obscure places. And I wound up in the African section. I found this album by Pierre Akindenge, and I'm sure I butchered that name, but that's okay. And it was this gorgeous Africa French album. It's like African rhythms with French lyrics, but tons of instrumentation and percussion and strings and all sorts of body to these songs. Really enjoyed it. It really had offered up some nice surprises, and this headphone showed that off really well. And of course, when I talk about African music, I can't miss one of my very favorites, Hugh Masekela and Hope. That album is a world-class recording. It's been done in 45 RPM on LP. It's been done on DSD files, and for good reason. It's spectacular. And if you haven't heard the song The Coal Train, stop in the name of love, get yourself into the search bar and do it right now on YouTube and listen to that track. It's magnificent. It's a spectacular track, spectacularly recorded with great instrumentation and empty space. This headphone did that song justice. And one of my other go-tos is always Los Lobos, and I love that Dream in Blue track off of Kiko, and this one does not disappoint in any way. That bass drum hits and it kicks the back of your head out. And while I was on Tidal, I also fell prey to their artist of the day. It was Van Halen, and I couldn't help pulling up Van Halen 1 and listening to Runnin' with the Devil with the boom, boom. And when Eddie Van Halen hits that guitar, it really explodes out of this headphone. It's a magnificent listen. Now, these headphones are great cold. When you wake up in the morning and you put them on and you call up a track, they sound spectacular. When you start putting other headphones up against them, and we haven't done a shootout with these, and we probably should, because this will hold their own against a lot of other headphones, like the U12T or the U18 Tsar. I probably should do a shootout with those because I think that they would give the Tsar a run for its money. Probably not quite Odin class because the Odin is so hyper detailed, but we could throw those into the mix. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see any of those. But I would say that cold, these are great. They start to show cracks when you start putting them up against something like the KSE or the Odin. But as far as competitors, I don't know that there's going to be much that's going to be able to touch this $1,400 price tag. I think that anybody who's looking for a headphone at $2,000 or under needs to audition the Mest. The Mest is a very impressive headphone that I found myself just kicking back and listening. I'd go 5-6 songs deep into a record before I'm like, oh, maybe I want to listen to something else now. But I just kept listening. It's just so pleasant. They're so enjoyable to listen to. In fact, they remind me of a headphone that's back here. This has been in the back of every one of my episodes, and I've never called them out, but I'm going to call them out now. This is the THX00, which was a Massdrop produced back when it was Massdrop, before it went to drop. And you can even see there's a Massdrop in there. This headphone is a magnificent headphone for about $500. It gives you a fantastic, it's based on the 900, the Fostex 900, which is a spectacular sounding bio-cellulose driver headphone. It's got pretty much the same driver in it, but the tuning on this is gorgeous. These are such fun headphones to listen to because they have tremendous bass, they have beautiful sparkling treble, and a nice V shape. They're very pleasant headphones to listen to. Fostex discontinued their partnership with Drop. They don't make these anymore. They're fantastic. They're a great sounding headphone. And I will give the same compliment to the Mest. This is a headphone that you just want to pull out and put in your head, go sit back on the deck with a cold one, put your feet up, and enjoy some tunes. That's what these are about. That's what these are about. And I think that this headphone is the modern version of what this headphone did 5 or 6 years ago when it hit the market. And it made a splash. These things were huge at the time. So that's kind of my wrap up with the Unique Melody Mest, and I'm kind of glad I did this sound check because I really did do a deeper dive and really investigated the nuances of this headphone in a way that just putting them in your ear when you first unbox them doesn't do. So coming up in the next few episodes, I'm probably going to be doing a shootout with this Mest, and maybe it's the U18 SARS, but again, put a comment down below if you have one that you would like to hear that I have in house. I'm not going to go out and buy something new just to do a sound comparison shootout with another headphone. Okay, I'm not made of money.
Son of a biscuit.
But speaking of that, you do need to like and subscribe so I have a chance at making some money on this channel at some point in the future. So please click that subscribe button. It really does help me out in ways you can't imagine. And I do have that partnership, which I'm hoping gets rolling in the next few weeks. We're still in discussion as far as logistics, but I think you're really going to have fun with it. I know I can't wait because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. That's called a tease. And then I do think in terms of sound checks, I do owe an episode to the ZMF Verite that's just a sound check and not one where I'm rolling in a bunch of pads that start shaping a sound that I really haven't defined yet. And I already know you guys ain't going to watch anything with a bunch of head pads.